let's have a look at configuring VLANs. In other words, we're going to take a switch and then subdivide it so that its individual ports are actually in different networks. But remember, that means that as soon as we apply these VLANs, the devices that are actually on these different ports will not be able to communicate with one another, since they will be in separate networks. And in order for devices on separate networks to communicate, you are going to need a layer 3 device, such as a router, to route the traffic between the networks. Right, so let's have a look. We're going to have 3 VLANs, VLAN 10, VLAN 20, VLAN 30, which align with the 10.0, 20.0, and 30.0 networks. Now, VLAN 10 will only be on the Office LAN 1 switch from ports 1 to 20. VLAN 20 will be on both the switches. In this case, let me just modify it. From port 21 to 24 on the first switch. And I actually modified it now, but it was correct. Let's just change it back. It's going to be from port 21 to 22 on Office LAN 1, and on Office LAN 2, which is the second switch, it's going to be on ports 1 to 15. Then we have VLAN 30, which is going to be on ports 23 and 24 on this switch, and then on that switch is going to be from port 16 to 24. So basically, this switch over here is going to have ports in VLAN 10, 20, and 30, whereas this switch is just going to have ports in VLAN 20 and 30. Let's just add an extra device over here while I'm talking. So let's say PC5, since we're going to have 2 VLANs over here. Okay, so let's get to the config. So CLI, and what we want to do is we want to be in the global config mode, so conf term, and then what we want to do is we want to create the VLANs. So we said, if you go and take a look, we said on this switch we have VLAN 10 and we have VLAN 20 and also VLAN 30. So all 3 VLANs, their names are clerical, general, and technical. So in other words, clerical staff, general staff, and technical staff. So let's say we are going to create VLAN 10. The name of that VLAN is clerical. We're also going to create VLAN 20. The name of that one is general. And then we're going to create VLAN 30. The name of that one is technical. Okay, so those are our 3 VLANs that we've just created. So let's do a show VLAN. Okay, so take a look at this. At the moment we have a VLAN 1 and all of our interfaces are in VLAN 1. And then we have VLAN 10, we have VLAN 20, and we have VLAN 30 with no ports allocated to it. Okay, then we have a few VLANs which we don't care about. We don't actually use them. And they are also built-in ones that we can't really modify. But you can see it's for technologies such as token ring, etc. Okay, so what else were we told? We were told that the native VLAN is VLAN 99. Okay, so we'll get back to that in a minute. Okay, so what a lot of people do is they actually, upon startup, they take the default VLAN, which is VLAN 1 at the moment. You can go and take those interfaces out of those VLANs. So what a lot of people do is they put them into the new native VLAN, which is going to be VLAN 99. So that is an option if you want to do it. Okay, we're not going to do it right now, but in many instances, it is a recommended practice. Even if you put it into another VLAN whichever number you want to choose. The reason for this is just everyone expects all interfaces at a default to be in VLAN 1. So in other words, if anyone gains access to your device, the first thing they will think about is that all of your interfaces are in VLAN 1 at a default. So one of the practices is basically just take your interfaces out of VLAN 1. Okay, so that's not the focus of this one. However, we're going to take a look at doing basic VLAN configs for the first time. So let's see. Our next step is to now go and set it up that we have VLANs, or we have interfaces in each of these VLANs. So the question did tell us what we should do. So it says, I wonder why this thing keeps changing how the screen is displayed. So if you see me changing things, that's Mac is doing this automatically. So VLAN 10 is going to be on Office LAN 1 on ports 1 up to 20. Okay. So in order to put an interface into a VLAN, we need to go into that interface, so FA01, and a port that's in a specific VLAN is an access port. So we need to make sure that the interface is an access port. And we do that by issuing the command switch port mode access. Now at a default, all interfaces are access ports. The only reason you do this is if this is a device that probably has already been in use and you want to make sure that it's indeed an access port. I've just gotten into the habit of always just making sure it is an access port since it's a brief command to type. So switch port mode access, and then we need to tell it, listen, you are an access port, but for which VLAN? Okay, so we are now saying this is an access port, but it's for VLAN 10. Just take note that this command switch port access VLAN doesn't actually make it an access port. The previous command switch port mode access makes it an access port. So switch port access VLAN and then the number tells the interface or port in which VLAN it should actually operate. And that is it. Now you've added that port into VLAN 10. So let's do a show VLAN. And you can see VLAN or interface 1 is now under VLAN 10 and no longer in VLAN 1. Now this is going to be a really tedious process if we have to do it one by one for every one of these interfaces. And I know it's a tedious process because way back when I started working on these devices, I was writing a skills exam and I forgot about the command that I'm going to show you now. And I actually had to do this process for each and every single interface on the 2 or 3 switches that were in the skills exam. Okay, so luckily if you remember this command, you won't have to go through this tedious process like I did. So let's see. On Office LAN 1, interfaces fast Ethernet 01 up to 20 are in VLAN 10. So let's just say interface range FA01 up to 20. So what that says is, listen, we are now going to configure the range of interfaces from fast Ethernet 1 up to fast Ethernet 20. And any commands that we apply are going to be applied to all of these interfaces. So basically, switch port mode access and switch port access VLAN 10. So if we now do a show VLAN, you will see that all of those ports have been moved over to VLAN 10. Yeah, that's a lot more hassle-free than doing it the other way, isn't it? Okay, so then we also have VLAN 20, which is just ports 21 and 22. So let's say int range FA01, FA21 to 22. and switch port mode access, switch port access VLAN 20. Okay, great. And then lastly, we have ports 23 and 24. Just what's with my typing today? 23 and 24, which are on VLAN 30. Okay, so there we go. Switch port mode access, switch port access VLAN 30. And if we do show VLAN, you can see it actually reflects in our config. Okay, so nice and easy. If you want to see what it shows you in the running config, it looks like this. Okay, as you can see, it actually shows you on every single one of the ports what was configured. Okay, so let's leave it there. Let's do a copy run start. And then let's go to our other switch. So this one. So en conf term, and on this one we only have interfaces in VLAN 20 and we have VLAN 30. Now for consistency, you'll see in many cases there's a protocol which we're not discussing at the moment, which will actually allow you to propagate your VLAN information automatically through the network. So in other words, you don't actually have to do this on each and every device. It will automatically be pushed through the network. Now, in our case, just for consistency, we are defining the same VLANs on all of our switches, and it's just for configuration consistency. Okay, so that's it. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to go and put ports into the specific VLANs. So ports 1 up to 15 are in VLAN 20. So interface range FA01 up to 15, switch port mode access, switch port access VLAN 20. And then we have ports 16 up to 24. So 16 up to 24, switch port mode access, switch port access VLAN 30. So those are our VLANs defined. Okay. Now we're actually not done yet. If we take a look over here, there's a link between the two switches. Now at the moment, okay, that link is on gigabit 02. Now at the moment, that link is still an access port. We need to change that because the link that sits between our devices needs to be able to carry traffic for more than one VLAN. So it can't be an access port. An access port is only for traffic from a specific VLAN. Okay, so to that end, we are going to go into interface gig 02, and we are going to say switch port mode trunk. Okay, so you'll see immediately it goes down initially. Okay, so what a trunk port is, like we said, it's not an access port. It's the kind of port that carries traffic for multiple VLANs. Okay, so what we need to do is we are going to tell it switch port trunk, and then you see we have two options. We have native and allowed. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go with the native command. So switch port trunk native, and the reason is the question tells us, again, because the default native VLAN on Cisco switches are VLAN 1. So we should change it to something else. So it's not the expected values when someone gains access to your device who shouldn't have access to it. So we're changing the native VLAN with this command by saying switchboard trunk native VLAN 99. Okay, that's our first step. Now, if we're lucky, we will see a message pop up. Okay, I'm going to continue with the config and we'll see if it pops up or not. But that switches your native VLAN. Now, what you have to remember is your link between your two switches is a point-to-point link. So anything that you change on this side also has to be changed on the other side. The reason being, you're going to get messages like this one, for which I've been waiting. It says that there's a native VLAN mismatch. Okay, what does that mean? It means that the two switches on this trunk link are using different native VLANs. That makes sense because we haven't configured the other end yet. That end is still on native VLAN 1. This side is on native VLAN 99. So there's a native VLAN mismatch. So what you configure on this side, you have to configure on the other side. Okay, but we'll get to that in a minute. Another thing that we can configure is the following. Switchboard trunk allowed VLAN. Okay, so you see there are options. We are simply going to list the allowed VLANs as a comma separated list. Okay, so what does this command do? If we take a look, on this side we have VLANs 10, 20 and 30. On this side we have VLANs 20 and 30. So there are no interfaces currently for VLAN 10 on this specific switch. Now, it's not wrong if you don't issue this command. It's just, if you have a lot of traffic flowing, it sort of helps you to block unwanted traffic. Since there's no need for VLAN 10 traffic to flow on the trunk link, you can set it up to only allow traffic for VLAN 20 and VLAN 30. Again, remember, the reason this is the case is because there are no VLAN 10 ports over here. So there's no need for VLAN 10 traffic to actually cross over the trunk link to the switch. There's no purpose to it. There's nowhere that the traffic could possibly be delivered. So remember, if you have an instance like this, you can issue this command. You don't have to. It's not wrong if you don't. It's just more optimal if you do. Okay, and that is it. So now we just need to go to the other side and issue the same commands. Okay, so interface gig 02 switch port mode trunk, and you can see these debug messages can actually be quite irritating. There is a command that you can use to take them away. We're not taking a look at it in this video, but just bear in mind you can limit how it displays. Then also switch port trunk native VLAN 99 and switch port trunk allowed VLAN 20 and 30. And that is it. That's your basic config. Now, as we said, remember the devices won't actually, let me just save everything. The devices won't actually be able to communicate with one another as yet. If you have devices that are in the same subnet, great, that will work. But if they are not in the same subnet, i.e. VLAN, the devices will not be able to communicate. Now, in order for us to test this, let's go and set up a few devices. So let's see. PC1, we're going to say PC1 is going to be in VLAN 10. So VLAN 10 is from ports 1 to 20. So we can plug PC1 into any port from 1 up to 20. So let's just choose one. Secondly, we can plug PC2, if it's going to be for VLAN 20, into port 21 or 22. And lastly, we can plug VLAN 30, PC3, we can plug it into port 23 or 24. Now, once this is done, we still need to give these devices addresses. Okay, so desktop, ipconfig, and if this device is in VLAN 10, it needs to have an address in VLAN 10. So 192.168.10.2 default subnet mask. And although we don't have a router in the mix at the moment, let's just say the default gateway in future, once we set up a router, will be 192.168.10.1. Okay. For PC2, we need to give it an address in VLAN 20, so that is 20.2. And again, let's set up the default gateway as 192.168.20.1. And then for PC3, 192.168.30.2 and 192.168.30.1. Okay, great. Now all that's left, we need to go and link up these devices too. So PC4 in this case is going to be in VLAN 20. So it'll be anywhere from ports 1 to 15. Okay, and then we also have PC5 in ports, somewhere in ports 16 to 24. So 16 to 24, let's say port 22. Then we also need to give them IP addresses. This one is in VLAN 20. So 192.168.20.3. Default gateway 192.168.20.1. And this one is in VLAN 30, so 192.168.30.3 and 192.168.30.1. Okay, fantastic. So all that's left to do, let's just test a ping or two. What I'm going to do is I'm going to test from this PC, since it's in VLAN 20. Let's just see. Desktop, close that. So command prompt, I'm going to say ping 192.168. Let's say can it ping the device 10.2. Okay, remember 10.2 is the student device that is on the same actual switch. It's just in a different VLAN. Okay, so no luck. It shouldn't work because you can't ping a device that is on the same device or that is plugged into the same switch if the interfaces that are plugged in are on different subnets or VLANs. So let's try and ping a device that is now on the other switch. Remember, the PC we're currently on is in Office VLAN 1. Now the PC that we're going to plug now or ping now is on on the Office LAN 2 switch, but it's in the same VLAN as this switch, as this PC. And there you see, it actually works. So with the VLANs installed, you can ping any device that is in the same VLAN or network as your current device. Unfortunately, you just won't be able to ping a device that is even on the same switch as the current PC is plugged in if it is on a different VLAN. To get that working, we're going to have to do some routing.